Hatterene does absolutely nothing, and you get a free switch in for Ursaluna. That's fantastic, actually. Could not be a better play there for Brandon. But Brian thought of a good move there. Trick Room. It's still a good play for Brandon, though. The unfortunate part is this team just cannot do anything, especially if this Ursaluna does Terra to Ghost. The worst case scenario is you get Ivy Cudgeled, and then you can just click on Earthquake and Wide Guard again. You don't really need your Trick Room up. You can Facade onto the Hatterene slot. It's definitely going to go down to that. It can't really do anything, and anything you switch in is just going to get hit just as hard. Indeedee, Torkoal, Urshifu, anything is going to get hit if you're Brian. The Ogerpon is a little concerning. I wouldn't be surprised to see Ursaluna protect and maybe focus on the Ogerpon just to make sure that it gets rid of it, but I still think you don't really need to play Trick Room mode with Ursaluna on the field, especially because there's a good chance this Ursaluna does outspeed the Hatterene. So why would you go for that? Maybe go for a Wide Guard Earthquake. Is just get rid of both. I mean, that way Hatterene obviously can't do anything, and you're still reliant just on that Ogerpon. But then you break the Ogerpon sturdy, and you're in good shape there. There is that Terrestrial to Ghost. I think that's a very wise play because you are threatened by a potential Wood Hammer from this Ogerpon Cornerstone, and so you don't want to deal with that because you are weak to it. And Hatterene just going to protect. That's smart. You want to survive as much as possible. I wouldn't be surprised if we see an Ivy Cudgel come out. There's the Wide Guard. I'm assuming it's going to be an Earthquake to break the Sash/Sturdy on the Ogerpon Cornerstone. But we're going to just see that Wood Hammer come out. I mean, it is going to do a lot. Actually, onto the Gallade. But Gallade takes the hit, and this may have just opened up a knockout. There is that Earthquake, which was the very safe call there. Gallade going to be protected thanks to the Wide Guard. Obviously, a protect on Hatterene means it doesn't get hit, but this Ogerpon, which is at about half health, now going to face a Guts-boosted Earthquake for Ursaluna, and it is not going to take it. It is out of there. Now the question is, who do you go into? Actually, this is a pretty safe switch in for Brian here, I would say. Urshifu, right? Like, there's not much that Urshifu can do. It is a interesting call because Urshifu is in a very good spot. Wicked Blow will hit the right side no matter what. You do have Indeedee. Hatterene is slower, most likely, than the Gallade. So the question is, what do you do in this case? I think you kind of have to switch, sacrifice an Indeedee, and go for a Sacred Sword onto the onto the Urshifu, because once you get your Ursaluna back in, that's going to be the main key here. We are going to see Indeedee switch in, which it's kind of the right play. You just want to sacrifice there. And a Terra coming out. This is, I believe, from Brian's side, it is that Urshifu's Terra. It is Grass. Very, very smart Terra there. Because you now are no longer going to get knocked out by the Sacred Sword, and you're free to go for, and there's a Wicked Blow, so no Wide Guard. You're free to just, at this point, go for an Expanding Force of your Hatterene, which is exactly what you wanted. And that's why you want to play the Trick Room. The one thing I really do like about Brian's set is it is very fast and very slow. You can play with, because Hatterene's got some, and there's a Sacred Sword damage doing it, like I said, but because Hatterene is so slow and Urshifu is relatively fast, you are in a really good speed tier where you can sweep on either mode. And we just saw exactly why that is super useful right now, because Brandon is now down to his last two, which I believe are going to be the Torkoal and the yeah, this is decent. It's gonna be close. Here's the thing. Yeah, it's not great. Because it's gonna come down to Torkoal versus Hatterene speed, and generally Torkoal is slower. And this is not Trick Room. So the Wicked Blow obviously going to connect with Ursaluna and just knock it out. You basically have to outspeed. That's what you're hoping. If this Torkoal is faster than Hatterene, you get an Eruption off, should be able to pick up a knockout, I believe, on both. If not, it is game over right here. And it is the Hatterene that goes first, so Expanding Force. Not what you wanted. Single target in Psychic Terrain with Life Orb, one-hit KO. So, okay, now, first off, that is a really, really well-played game there by Brian, because Brian, like I said, took advantage of that Trick Room, reversed it with Hatterene, and then knew if the Trick Room was coming up, Hatterene was in a good spot. If the Trick Room didn't come up, then you can just start sweeping now with Urshifu. And again, it's a really, really interesting position, because when Brian's team is built to be work outside of Trick Room, like we saw the Urshifu and the Ogerpon lead, but then you can switch in and be like, you know what, no, it's Trick Room time. And so I think that's a very, very interesting strategy. Another option, though, we could see, it's interesting because Brandon does have the faster Urshifu. It is Choice Scarf, not Choice Band. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we see something like that come out, just kind of threaten right away onto the opposing Urshifu, and then, or U-turn out, which Brandon's does have U-turn, so U-turn out into like Torkoal and then sweep. And so it's a weird scenario here where you go into what do you go for? What's the smarter strategy? I think we saw the mons that Brian picked. I do not fault him at all for trying to switch things up. I would also switch things up because you saw obviously that strategy work where you reversed your Trick Room. You want to make sure that if you do that again, you want to catch, in this case, you want to catch Brandon off guard, you know. And so I think that this is a good call. I believe it is a mistake on the screen right now. I believe Brian won the last match. But yeah, so I think that is the call. You want to use, you obviously used your trick play there, and you're like, okay, now that I've done it right, I'm gonna go ahead and bring out a completely different set. And so we're gonna just get right into it. We're gonna see Hatterene and NDD lead for Brandon, Ogerpon, and Torkoal. For Brian, good lead. Actually, really, it is a good lead, but it's also a bit of a scary lead because this Torkoal doesn't want to. It's a 50-50 call. It's Torkoal and a switch, right? Because it's a mirror, so you have to understand how you play against yourself. But in this case, we can see that from the last match, Ogerpon can do about 50% onto NDD. Is the Hatterene going to go for a Trick Room? Is it going to go for an Expanding Force? Is it going to go for a Dazzling Gleam? If it Trick Rooms, you want to kind of just stay in with Torkoal. If it goes for Dazzling Gleam, you also want to stay in with Torkoal. But there's a chance that it could go for Expanding Force, which will allow you to go for a free switch into the Urshifu's single style form. But then there's a potential that NDD is going to go for a Trick Room. However, if you do attack and go for the NDD going for Trick Room and have Hatterene attack, Hatterene is very susceptible to a Ivy Cudgel. We saw how much it did on NDD, which is bulkier physically, and we're just going to see that Torkoal switch out. I think that's a smart play. It is a threat right now, and Urshifu is a very valid choice, so definitely calling the Expanding Force here. The Ivy Cudgel going to connect with the Hatterene. This is going to do a lot of damage. I don't think it's a KO, but yeah, it looks like 75%. And the Expanding Force is going to happen. That was really very good switching for Brian, especially right now if the Trick Room does come up. Then I'd say it's a really, really good switch-in. And there is that Trick Room. So yeah, this is a very, very solid switch-in because you are free to go ahead and Terra that Urshifu, stay in, get rid of the NDD, and then it's basically a Torkoal off. You could switch, but the thing is, you're going to get Expanding Force no matter what. So do you want to really switch in? Knowing that you have Gallade in the back, I think you just go for a Terra Grass and Wicked Blow onto NDD. I don't think that an Expanding... It's a tough one, because Expanding Force could potentially KO. But I think you gotta just trust that you can take the hit. That's the... Or there's a potential for Dazzling Gleam. Because an Expanding... it's another 50-50 call. Do you go for Expanding Force expecting a Terra, or do you Dazzling Gleam knowing that that's the safer play? And we're gonna see a Terra. I believe this is the Terra to Grass. Yep. I think the Terra to Grass is just going to be the right play. Do you live in Expanding Force? I don't know. But it's definitely going to live in Dazzling Gleam. And the Expanding Force was called. Yeah, that is, you can see that was not what Brian was expecting. Is it a bad position? No. I mean, you do lose your first two, but they are fast and Trick Room is up. You do have Torkoal on the back as well, which is really, really good considering that the Hatterene will definitely go down, and then your last one's Gallade. Gallade will definitely pick up the KO on the NDD, and then it's a 2-on-2. But the question is, what did Brandon bring out in the back? Brandon also brought out a Torkoal. Then we're going to be in a bit of a mirror. We do have Weather Ball on Brian, so that is really good because you can avoid the wide guards. Meanwhile, Brandon's Torkoal having Choice Specs Weather Ball. Actually, I believe they are the exact same set. Yeah, they are. So shows you that it's going to be a bit of a weird mirror matchup, and locking on the Just Specs move is really going to be an interesting whose Torkoal's faster kind of situation. I think, though, it's a pretty standard play here. Brian's got to just go... Here's the tough part, though. If you lock into Eruption, and it is Gallade and Torkoal in the back for Brandon, you're kind of... That's not good, because you're now locking into Eruption, in which Gallade can just continue to wide guard. The opposing Torkoal can then just go for Weather Ball to get rid of the Gallade and then knock it out. A Helping Hand plus move here, it's not gonna. We're not gonna see what it was because the Eruption's gonna go ahead and just pick up the knockout. What do you do with the Gallade then? That's the thing. Do you go for the reverse of the Trick Room? Do you just go for an attack? I think you just go for an attack right here, personally. But yeah, just in case the enemy didn't go down. Now the question is, what is Brandon's last two? If it is anything, it is Torkoal. That's not good for Brian. I would guess it's Guide. Oh, hello, Mirror Coat activate. No, there is one reason why Brandon has the upper hand here, and that is Brandon could still pick a move that is not its choice specs. It couldn't be a non-eruption. It could be a single target weather ball, and that might be really what the play is here. If I were Brandon, I would go for a weather ball, a Terra Fire, which is what we're seeing, and wide guard with Gallade, and then just try and go for a weather ball onto the Gallade. And then at that point, if you can, at this point right now, if Brandon can get rid of Gallade with his Torkoal right now, it's game over. Brandon wins the match. And then we go to game 3. Or sorry, wins the game, and we go to game 3. There's the wide guard, obviously preventing Torkoal. No possibility for eruption here. However, this weather ball needs to KO. And if not, then it's going to be a very... I think if you're Brian, you go for Psycho Cut. There's no doubt about it. There's that weather ball. Yep. Terrifier, weather ball in the sun. Going to connect with the Gallade. If this one hits, it is going to be a game 3 situation. And it does, which means it is most likely going to game 3. I'd be really surprised if it doesn't. Obviously, I can't say for sure, but Brandon is a very, very good position. Yeah, we are going to game 3. 1-1. That's what happens with mirror matches. They are unpredictable. Very well played there, in this case by Brandon. Nice adjustment. I do think maybe the Hatterene would have been a nice switch in. For Brian, I don't know if the Urshifu added much. I mean, obviously, the call of that Terra was a very, really good call by Brandon. I think, like I said, you got to understand whether or not you play your own team. The interesting thing is you're playing Urshifu Single Strike. You know what beats Urshifu Single Strike. And it was a 50-50 call whether or not going to go to Dazzling Gleam or the Expanding Force. And it was a very good Expanding Force because that decided exactly the match there. At that point, once it was a mirror, having the ability to still pick a move in Weather Ball instead of being locked under Eruption, which can get wide guarded, that was really the detrimental play there. And I completely understand why Brian went for what he did, because he had to go for the Eruption to get rid of the Hatterene Indeedee combo. I think if you're going into match 2, though, I wouldn't necessarily bring in the Ogerpon. I don't think it did too much. I feel if either Urshifu or Ogerpon. But then Gallade, I wouldn't necessarily bring them both in. I don't know if it's necessary. Yeah, I think the play is to go Gallade or Hatterene. Another trigger user. Indeedee, you could just... yeah, it's a good mix. I just think you need Torkoal as well, though. No matter who you're playing. Wouldn't be surprised to see Ursaluna come back. It did get threatened by the Urshifu, but now knowing that, I wouldn't lead Ursaluna. It was a situation where it was a really good call to reverse the Trick Room, but if you can get your Trick Room up, then Ursaluna's in a really good position. So I believe it also takes, maybe not Choice Specs Eruption, but it's bulky, so it can take a hit and then go for a Headlong or Facade or Earthquake or something to help it. I do have to take the Flame Orb damage, which is annoying, but it's worth it. That being said, it may just be worth it to go for the exact same match that we saw with Brandon. I don't know if that's necessarily a weakness. It's such a mirror in the fact that you could play so many different leads knowing what beats your team that you can... It's tough. You have to get into your opponent's head and see what they're going to lead. And we're going to see Brandon lead with that Urshifu and Indeedee, and Ogerpon and Urshifu coming back for Brian. Interesting. It's not bad at all, actually, for Brian. Can definitely pick up the knockout onto Indeedee. However, your Urshifu, Brandon's Urshifu being Choice Scarf is a big, big scare, because you are free to go for a close combat and knock out the opposing Urshifu, or break the Ogerpon to Sash. I wouldn't even be surprised right now if we see Terra... This Indeedee, by the way, is Terra Fairy on Brandon's side. I wouldn't be surprised to see Terra Fairy follow me and close combats back-to-back. And then it'll be interesting from there. Because I think with your Brandon, you really want to keep your Ogerpon... You want to at least get your Ogerpon out. I feel like that's a little more threatening just because that Ogerpon and Urshifu combo can knock out Indeedee. You do have to Terra this Indeedee to Fairy to survive. I mean, that's the only option. If Brian called this, it does have Poison Jab on his Urshifu, so that could potentially knock out the Indeedee if partnered with an Ivy Cudgel. But we're going to see Wicked Blow for Brandon. I'm a bit surprised, I guess, anticipating a switch out, but did not happen. I was expecting a close combat. There's that Ivy Cudgel. It is going to actually connect with the Urshifu slot. Maybe a Dazzling Gleam coming out for Indeedee. And that is going to just pick up the knockout on Urshifu. That is interesting. What is the speed of that Urshifu? It didn't... I think it's a slower choice band set. From what I see here. What I see here, I think the Indeedee does outspeed, which is very interesting. That's not common at all, but you don't necessarily need min-speed Indeedee considering its Dazzling Gleam is the only non-priority move. Trick Room's negative priority, Helping Hand is priority, and Follow Me is priority, so speed doesn't usually matter in Indeedee all that much, and in this case, it actually really benefited it. At this point, Brandon's in a decent spot. I think it's interesting because you know you're going to lose the Torkoal's Eruption, so I think what I would do is just go for the Wicked Blow into the Torkoal, hoping obviously there will redirect, and then I don't even know. I think you just kind of have to take the Eruption. It's a weird situation, but Indeedee's bulky enough where it can take it. And then after that, obviously, you can go into like Gallade and go for a Helping Hand Psycho Cut or something like that. But we're going to see that Follow Me. If Gallade was brought in, I think it's a really good position for Brandon, and I think it looks like it was. Wicked Blow, going to go ahead and connect with the Ogerpon, does pick up the KO there. Yeah, you just kind of have to. I would not set up the Trick Room right now if I were Brandon's Indeedee. I would probably just go for Dazzling Gleam and chip it. Yeah. I mean, it's obviously not going to do a lot because it's resistant onto a fire type, but it is going to chip a little bit off, and that means Eruption's going to do a little less. And that mainly, you know you're going to lose your Urshifu, and that is why you click Dazzling Gleam. That may have been why a roll if it wasn't chipped, but that little bit of chip really, really helps. I think Brandon's in a position to just kind of get rid of this matchup here, especially knowing that this Torkoal is locked onto Eruption. That's the big, big play. We're going to see Gallade come out on Brian's side. I think Brandon's going to go for the Gallade as well. Yep, that's just the right play. You just click Psycho Cut onto Brian's Torkoal, and that is it, I think. Yeah, because I don't think either Gallade can knock out the other, which is just going to open up the Psycho Cut possibility for Brandon to get rid of the Torkoal. There's really nothing that Brian can do here unless the Torkoal survives, but it's locked onto Eruption, and it's the last two Pokemon, so if it takes a Psycho Cut at all, that's just not good. The only thing that Brian could pull this out is if his Gallade outspeeds and one-hit KOs, and I just... And Brandon's Gallade is going to be able to just pick up this... pick right now. I mean, we're seeing it now Top Cut again because of its utility with Wide Guard, but that is what shows you how much Psycho Cut does, and it's insane. And that is going to wrap it up for our Swiss round. We've got our Top Cut, Top 8 coming up very soon, so stick around for that. I don't know who is in it. Maybe you want to find out. Find out later because we'll be back with our Top 8 quarterfinals in a few moments. Isn't that right, Emotional Support Pikachu? We'll see you then. Woo.